Hey there, you budding Old Testament scholars. Welcome to Module 7, Lecture number 18. This is an introduction to wisdom literature and also to the book of Job. As per usual, I'm going to be reading off my notes because I don't have them all memorized, so I will do so. In this lecture, we're going to turn our attention to what many scholars call wisdom literature. Traditionally, the wisdom texts in the Old Testament can be seen as Proverbs, which is mostly proverbial wisdom or wisdom sayings or talking about wisdom. And then the book of Job and Ecclesiastes, and those are often referred to as speculative wisdom, speculating on things like the meaning of life or the problem of pain and death in the world. So while these three books have the most pervasive and intense presentation of wisdom in the Old Testament, it is important to know that there are numbers of other books or parts of other books that speak about and that illustrate wisdom. These include select psalms that are wisdom psalms. The book of Deuteronomy has wisdom literature. The Song of Psalms and even some of the historical Old Testament narratives have wisdom literature. We have to be careful to hold the line in some of these instances in terms of what is not wisdom literature. It can be difficult after a while to determine what constitutes as wisdom literature and what doesn't, but it is true that the wisdom genre can be seen really throughout the entirety of the Old Testament on and off. With this in mind, we might ask, why are the books of Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes given the spotlight when it comes to the primary examples of wisdom texts? The answer to this is much more streamlined. In short, all three of these texts make it a point to explicitly explore the nature of wisdom. Perhaps the most notable connection to make between the three different texts is how they all seek to define wisdom. This is best seen in Proverbs 1:7, where it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." Ecclesiastes and Job both agree with this definition. So in Job chapter 28, verse 28, the author or writer says, "Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom." And Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 12 and 13 says, "Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God." I do want you to note that fear of God doesn't mean that we are sitting terrified that God is about to reach out and smite us. That is not what that means. Fear of God here means being in awe of God, recognizing that God is God and I am not God. And God is other and all powerful and holy and awesome. It's trying to actually recognize something about the person and the nature of God. So that's important to understand. Aside from this agreement on the nature of wisdom, these three wisdom texts contain many other similar themes. For example, they all affirm that wisdom embeds creation and that the value of wisdom far supersedes anything worldly, placing it in opposition to foolishness, which is grounded in worldly desires. Another similarity they share regards the nature of suffering. The wisdom genre affirms that suffering is very real, but its necessity is a mystery for the wisdom writers. In other words, you can make a choice that logically leads to suffering, something that you do that you would expect should lead to suffering, but that suffering may still not occur. Many psalmists have commented on this as well. For instance, Psalm 73 laments over the prosperity of the wicked. If they are truly wicked, shouldn't they be experiencing folly or punishment or disaster? The second half of the psalm, Psalm 73, finds peace with that scenario by utilizing this very wisdom motif of suffering. Altogether, while the wisdom genre can be seen in many other places in Scripture, the books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job are traditionally recognized as the three wisdom texts because of their agreement that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Let's go ahead and turn our attention to one of these three wisdom books, the book of Job. This book bears the name of its heroic main character, Job, whose righteousness was deemed legendary. For example, he's defined as being blameless and upright in the introduction. The book of Job raises universal questions of human suffering and integrity through the media of narratives and dialogue. Because of this, its wide appeal ranks it among the Bible's most read books. Job just deals with really tough issues of why is there pain in the world, and why do some people suffer? Is suffering meaningless? And the basic plot of the book of Job goes like this. There's an introduction that sets the stage for the drama of the whole story of Job. And it narrates the tragedy that strikes the family of Job, and then Job's own health and Job's reputation. Job's integrity is the subject of an exchange between God and the angelical adversary who's identified as the Satan, or the adversary. Satan claims that Job's piety, Job's goodness, is a result of God's divine blessing. So Satan implies that Job would give up on his piety, would turn his back on God if God took away Job's blessing. So that's what happens, and Job loses his kids and his crops and his animals, and everything is taken away in these terrible tragedies for Job. So Job's companions come along and they comfort Job, but they also insist that it's Job's own sinfulness that has brought on this disaster, and God is punishing him and his family because God is just, and this is what Job deserves. And Job, of course, denies it and says, no, I didn't. I haven't done anything that's wrong. God is punishing me for no reason. I don't understand what's going on. So there's this back and forth of exchanges between Job and Job's friends, right? And it constitutes 40% of the book of Job is this argument between him and his friends. Job's responses have some parallels from the Psalms of lament, and he maintains that he is innocent. But his friends speak like the opponents in a debate, and they're making their case, and he deserves the judgment of God because that's the way that God works. You're blessed if you do well, and you're cursed if you do evil, and that's the way that they understand. Then comes along this interloper named Elihu, and he offers a critique both of Job and Job's friends after this long interchange between them. Elihu's comments are followed by two speeches from God, who speaks out of a whirlwind. Job's humble response to the intricacies of the created order and a final reckoning between Job and Job's friends ends the book. Needless to say, this book is packed full of potential conversations, all sorts of things. There's so much that can be said about the theology, the history, the wisdom, the dialogue, the overall contribution to the Old Testament. We could easily have an entire module just on the book of Job and everything that there is to discuss about what's going on in this text. But for now, it may be sufficient to simply ponder the role of suffering as it relates to righteousness. Was it fair that Job was punished? In turn, was it fair that Job was blessed? Is fairness even a factor when it comes to these things? Perhaps Job says it best in chapter 1, verses 21. Naked I came from my mom's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gives, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.